This broadcast is brought to you by American Airlines, where if we can't beat our competition, we just beat our passengers. Just kidding. I stole that from a student who did a podcast assignment in the previous course that I taught. So if it was inappropriate, blame the kid. Anyway, hello and welcome to another episode of TeachAir Talk, where you'll find that teaching is my air. For any listeners new to this podcast, I am your host, Sakinah Riley, broadcasting on 2017's Memorial Day from little old Salisbury, North Carolina, in my bedroom closet, a place of refuge for my loving children that I discovered just this past year. I am a Low Country, South Carolina native who has been teaching in North Carolina since the fall of 2004. Sheesh, that's almost 4 presidential terms. Administration has changed. We have voted to eliminate and to elect leaders, but I am still here. Yay me! Yay for teachers! My teaching journey began after I graduated from St. Augustine's College, where in my last semester I accomplished a few pretty cool things. Feel free to check those out in the accomplishments and description section below. Currently, I teach high school in Rowan County at our district's early college. I'm today a mother, wife, and an educator who is always looking for new cool opportunities. Most recently, the path I walk as an educator has led me to UNC Charlotte, where I am pursuing a master's degree of education. And it just so happens that curiosity, chance, and a doctor named Coffee has met me there with the baskets of goodies I seek. The latest of these goodies has been an introduction to critical literacy. For this reason, today's podcast will explore my perception of critical literacy and critical pedagogy, as well as a few characteristics as described by theorists and philosophers from past and present societies. And I'd also like to share how I've positioned myself in this idea. To understand this theory, my classmates and I read from 3 sources this past week. Of them, McLean's argument that critical pedagogy was a result of, I quote, a yearning to give some shape and coherence to the theoretical landscape and radical principles, beliefs, and practices that contributed to the emancipatory ideal of democratic schooling in the United States during the 20th century. It's most helpful, I think. In essence, compulsory curriculum was both arbitrary and conventional in that it combined a body of agreed upon materials from people in a position of power, and that it shaped the blueprint from which all should follow. The problem with this is that this approach to education did not reach all people. Daughter et al. Argue that school systems must position themselves more politically, more socially, and more humanely in order to educate the masses. Most notably, philosophers like Paulo Freire noticed that compulsory education was empowering for those who were already in a position of power, and he argued that education must also be a tool for the marginalized, oppressed groups in society in order to empower them as well. Freire describes critical literacy as a theory of education that would allow the necessary liberation that these disenfranchised people needed to live equally in society. Philosophers such as Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who advocated for educating African Americans, Maxine Greene, who rallied for the emphasis on relationships to create aesthetic education, and even affiliates of the Frankfurt School, who began to focus on cultural superstructures, were no different than Freire, because they all aim to liberate the oppressed through education. As I mentioned earlier, our curriculums past and present are arbitrary and conventional, I think. I think they were decisions based in status quo as described by McLean. McLean reiterates this idea that truth is a regiment of society, and each society's truths can be just that, truth. The problem here arises when educational systems force foreign truths on groups of people, especially people in oppressed positions. So what do I think of this? Well, it makes perfect sense to me. As educators, we follow a doctrine that prescribes what we should know first, which is the source of the problem as described by McLean, and then we teach our students that same should-be knowledge, while much of what we teach is mandated. As educators, we also recognize the necessity to teach compassion, humanity, perseverance, and other qualities that help our students live a fulfilling life. We also teach them to think in a way that they should think, not how to think. We have to allow them happiness, healthiness, financial security, social awareness, just to name a few inalienable rights, and then allow them to use those things to formulate their own ideas about how they position themselves in society. In my classroom, I've tried to ensure that elements of critical literacy do actually exist. On any day, you might observe open ended inquiries, you might observe projects, or written opportunities for them to express their ideals about a certain text. Many of my students will be more accustomed to the fill in the blank way of teaching through the banking method of teaching that Freire describes, instead of the tool of liberation of the oppressed that we're trying to avoid. Because of this, you'll see frustration both on my part and the students. And in the last years within my county alone, there has been a push for teachers to utilize more problem posing instruction through PBL and LDC initiatives. I teach core curriculum skills and cultural ideas, then allow students to compose written pieces, as I said before, or critical or digital projects exhibiting their understanding of these beliefs and these skills. To understand critical literacy and pedagogies with even more depth, I checked out a few excerpts from new literature on Amazon, I scanned a few scholarly articles, and of course, sought out YouTube and wiki links through Google because it's the internet. It's gotta be true. If you're interested in some of those sources, you can look in the comment section as well. So when this particular path with MDSK 5000 comes to an end, I imagine myself presenting material differently. I hope to position myself in each world concerned with the education of our youth, as a teacher, a parent, and as a constituent invested in political awareness. I hope to teach the anchor and standard objectives more successfully than I have in past years. I realize that although I create opportunities for independent thought in my classrooms, I also monitor that independency by presenting options for what students can explore and expect certain truths within their work. Beyond this, I guess that challenges for my students should be focused on how they will use their analysis of a text to either understand or change themselves and society for better. This will be a challenge for sure because I am an advocate of true emancipation through the problem solving that Freire presents. I am a little nervous about having students formulate ideas too freely. What would my administration think? How much parent support would I receive? How much parent support would the students receive? How do I ensure balance and humanity in the thoughts that my students formulate without actually controlling their ideas? This I am not sure of. This is the challenge, but this is the part of what truly gives me breath. Thank you for listening to this session of TeachAir Talk. Exhaling and signing off, Sakinah Riley.